going gamers, Luis here from GVN, and this is the Game Evolution Show where I take a look at the evolution of a video game series. So far I've done the Super Mario Bros. And the Sonic the Hedgehog series, and I always ask you guys to leave ideas for the next episode in the comments of those videos, and by far the most requested video so far has been the Pokemon series, so I guess it's finally time to do it. Here's the evolution of the main handheld Pokemon RPG series, not including the spin-off games like the Mystery Dungeon games, or games that I don't personally consider as major progression in the series. Pokemon Red and Green were the first two RPG games to start the series. They came out in 1996 in Japan but were introduced as Pokemon Red and Blue in North America. The RPG featured 151 Pokemon total. You could catch 150 of them by either capturing them in-game or trading them, while number 151 Mew could only be obtained through game glitches or from Nintendo themselves. The goal of the game was to catch them all and become a Pokemon Master. Pokemon Yellow was introduced about a year after Pokemon Red and Blue in North America, and it added a few new features to the RPG. For one, you started with a Pikachu, and for the first time you can catch all three original Pokemon starters in one game. You would also have a tiny Pikachu follow you around in the game just like in the anime series. Some of the sprites in the game were also changed to resemble more like the looks of the anime. Pokemon Silver and Gold introduced a whole new generation of Pokemon in a brand new region called the Johto region. These were also the first official Game Boy Color Pokemon games that featured completely colored graphics and new sprites for all the previous Pokemon. You could also revisit the Kanto region from previous entries in the series. For the first time you could also breed your Pokemon, and with the addition of the colored graphics, rare shiny Pokemon were also introduced. Pokemon Crystal introduced the female gender character option for the first time. Playing as a female was a pure aesthetic change, and it didn't actually change any of the gameplay. There's also a slightly different story in Pokemon Crystal as compared to Silver and Gold that focuses on the Pokemon Suicune instead of Lugia or Ho-Oh. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were the first Pokemon games on the new Game Boy Advance, and it introduced a brand new generation of Pokemon. This new generation of Pokemon were found in the Hoenn region. For the first time you could battle in double battles and fight with two Pokemon at once. Natures and abilities were also added in this game. This gave each Pokemon a special ability that affected them in mid-battle. Also, the nature altered the stats of that Pokemon. Oh, and a lot of trumpets in the music. Pokemon Firered and Leafgreen were the first remakes of any other Pokemon game. Besides being remakes of the original Pokemon Red and Green, these games slightly alter the story of those games. For example, they slightly extended the story of Team Rocket after beating the Elite Four. Pokemon Emerald introduced a new storyline that focused on the Pokemon Rayquaza and brought back the animated sprites of Pokemon Crystal. Zootopolis also got a brand new gym leader in this game since Wallace is now the Pokemon champion in this game. A new character named Scott was also introduced and is eventually the person that informs you of the new Battle Frontier system. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was the first Pokemon series entry for the Nintendo DS, and it introduced the 4th generation of new Pokemon. This is also the first Pokemon game to support Wi-Fi that allows people from all around the world to trade and battle without the need for a link cable. The day and night system was also brought back from the Johto games. Pokemon Platinum was the 3rd entry in the Sinnoh region, and it brought back the Pokemon Battle Frontier that was introduced in Pokemon Emerald. The storyline in this game was also focused around the Giratina Pokemon. Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold brought remakes to the Nintendo DS, and it introduced a brand new Pokemon accessory called the Pokewalker. The Pokewalker was a speedometer that allowed you to raise your Pokemon levels while on a walk. The game also brought back the ability to have Pokemon follow you around in the game like in Pokemon Yellow. Pokemon Black and White introduced the 5th generation of Pokemon. bringing the total number of Pokemon at the time to 649. This was also the first time in history that one Nintendo handheld introduced two different Pokemon generations. The C-Gear was a new accessory that allowed players to connect to local wireless against other players to either trade or battle. You no longer needed to visit a Pokemon Center to just trade or battle your friends. Sprite animations were also brought back once again, but this time the animations continued on through the entire battle and not just the introduction of it. Pokemon Black and White 2 was the first Pokemon RPG direct sequel, and it takes place 2 years after the events of Pokemon Black and White. The sequel introduced some new gym leaders that replaced the ones from the previous game and has the trainer start in a new city, even though it's technically the same region. Medals were also added to the game as an achievement system. All the trainers in the game got battle animations, something that used to be limited to only certain trainers. Pokemon X and Y is the newest Pokemon game to introduce a brand new Pokemon generation. This was the 5th generation of Pokemon games, and it was the first Pokemon RPG for the Nintendo 3DS. For the first time ever, the Pokemon RPG series became full 3D on the handheld rather than just using sprites like in previous entries. Sky and Horde battles were also introduced, and a brand new fairy type was added that changed up the basics of the Pokemon battles. Mega Evolutions were also introduced in this game as a new part of the series that also added new evolutions to both new and older Pokemon. You could also purchase accessories and clothes to customize your character for the very first time. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were the first time that any older Pokemon RPG was remade in complete 3D. The addition of new forms also gave Groudon and Kyogre new primal forms. Secret bases were also brought back from the original game and were upgraded with new features like the ability to share your bases with your friends. And that pretty much wraps up for the evolution of the main Pokemon RPG series on the handhelds. It's a pretty lengthy series so far, and it looks like it's only going to keep on growing as time moves on. Thank you all very much for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and share it with your friends. If you have any suggestions for new episodes in this show, let me know in the comment section below, and it might actually become an episode. Thank you all very much for watching the video. If you haven't checked out the most recent videos I put up, I recently put up a video on the top 5 most underrated game consoles / handhelds of all time. That's my own personal list, as well as the evolution of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. So if you like this show, you might want to go check out the other 2 episodes I uploaded already, so be sure to check those out. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.